everyone. Pull up a chair and get comfy.
Oh, girl, have we got stories to tell you all? The Never Alone podcast is about to begin, and you don't want to miss a minute.
Hi.
Hi, Karen. We're back again with our podcast, the Never Alone podcast. Karen and I are back again for another fun visit. I hope you enjoyed the intro with the two pedigrees. I hope
Dogs.
one of them looks just like my dog, Penny, the Australian Shepherd. Kind of partial to that one.
Funny.
But anyway, here we are.
Funny.
We're back again, and we're going to be talking about, my life, my story, and our friendship, and other people's friendships, and whatever else is going to come in. So, Karen, you had some questions for me again.
I did. I wanted to talk about your mom a bit. I wanted to hear more about, well, I guess I can ask them kind of sequentially, but about her life. I know she grew up in Chelsea, which I thought was interesting.
Chelsea,
But
Massachusetts.
Chelsea, Massachusetts. Siblings, I couldn't remember. And I do know that she was pretty young when her father passed away. So I was kind of curious about what you knew and the stories that you knew of that.
Yeah. Well, my mother basically was born in 1932 in Chelsea, Massachusetts. She had one older sister. Her name was Ruthie. And, back then it was during the Depression. And my mother used to joke with us and she'd say, I was a Depression baby. And my sister would go, no kidding. Because she thought she was a bit depressive. And I thought, that's not nice. She's not depressive. My mother actually had a good sense of humor, Anyway, so she was born in 1932 during the Depression. And there was a lot going on. I mean, I talked a lot about this in my book and even in the episodic series that my friend Vincent and I wrote together. We talked about what it was like back then. Those were hard times. People had, no money. There were, people living in tents. You had the Dust Bowl back then. There was a lot going on. And, back then you went into, as time went on, you went into World War II and all these things. But anyway, back to my mother's story for a second. To my mother, from a very young child, it was very important to her that she always had friends, even as a very little girl. And I modeled after that because that's what I knew. That's what I saw her doing. And throughout my entire life and throughout her entire life, she always had a close friend or 10, When she went through high school, even, her and her friends did everything together. She had two best friends. They were named Florence, and they both had nicknames. Back then, they gave people nicknames. And so their names, do you remember this, Karen, Putsy and Fummy? Do you remember those names?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
That's so funny you say that.
Yeah.
I remember that totally.
Yeah, and
Patsy
those were her
Fummy.
best
Funny.
friends all through high school. She also had a third friend, and her name was Barbara. And I'm trying to remember what her name was and her maiden name. Anyway, her married name was Delant. But these friendships that she had remained not only through her childhood, but throughout her entire life. Until they all stayed friends until they died together. Nobody moved back then.
Yeah.
Today
Wow.
it's harder to have friends for 30 years or more because people move. You're lucky if you stay with friends, for that long. I noticed one in my own class, which we're wearing class colors here, maroon and gold, from Sharon High School. We both graduated, and Sharon High School in Sharon, Massachusetts. I'm 1977. I graduated. What year did you graduate, Karen?
1980
1980.
feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
And like 100
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. 19.
But, we talk about the importance of friendship and family, as always, and sticking together. I mean, I hate to keep repeating that, but it's true. If we stick together, there's power in numbers, there's strength in numbers. And so throughout my mother's life, there was good times and there was hard times. Her and her friends had a lot of fun together. But back then, they had to go to work at very early ages. My mother had to work at 14 in a bakery. She started working at 14 to help support the family because I'll tell you what happened here. When she was 10 years old, she was coming home from school and she stopped to see her friend Fummy. who lived 2 doors up the street from her, and they were kind of playing on the lawn together. And her father came along from his job. He worked at a bag and burlap company back then. And so he picked her up and was going to walk her, back to their house. And all of a sudden, as he was, grabbing her hand and he said, "Come on, Charlotte," they heard fire engines. And so there was a fire up the street, not too far. And he said, "Let's go see what that's all about." And so they walked together, and Fumi decided to go with them because she was curious too. She was only 10 years old at the time. I don't know where her mother was at that moment, maybe inside the house, who knows. So they're walking up the street, and her father's holding her hand, and Fumi's on the other side. And he looks at the house that's on fire, and it was all ablaze. I mean, the house was basically burning down. It was their home
Yeah.
that was on fire.
Oh, geez.
And my grandmother had been at work. Her sister Ruthie wasn't there. But the shock was so great for her father. He was 50 years old at the time. This was when she was 10. Yeah, he was 50. And so the shock was so great to him that he actually dropped right there. And he dropped dead right in front of my mother, holding her hand.
That had been so traumatizing.
But what
Yeah.
helped my mother is her friend Fumi, at 10 years old, came and hugged her and held her until her mother came along. And so she wasn't alone, right? So that's the title of my whole story in the Never Alone podcast. My mother was able to be comforted by her friend, so it wasn't so devastating. Does that make sense?
It does. It's profound, though. I think that loss at that age, and then to have a friend with you at that time, it has got to have been profoundly impacting.
Oh, it really impacted my mother. But, it was interesting because, yes, it really, it affected her in so many ways, but it also made her stronger. My mother was a strong woman because imagine at 10 years old, your father drops dead in front of you. And she said that she kept shaking him and saying, "Daddy, wake up, Daddy, wake up." And she didn't tell me that
No.
story, Karen, until I was in my 50s. And I said, "Mom, no wonder,
That's amazing.
it explained a lot of her behavior, where she
Sure.
felt like she had to always be
Sure.
strong and in control and, and help everybody, And it explained part of
And
it.
then you go and talk about working at a young age. Oh, sorry, Then I wanted to say, then you go and talk about her working at a young age, and that develops responsibility. And, every generation does it differently. It's funny. Not everybody gets that sense of purpose or responsibility to their family. And that says a lot. I think I was thinking about you and I talked about past week about your mom and how she really wanted you to excel and stuff. And a lot of her story is why she wanted to have you prepared for life.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she didn't want me to crumble when things became tough. She also wanted me to
Hmm.
cling to
Right.
friends and family. She wanted me to get married
Right.
so I was not alone, right? But yeah, because my grandmother was now a single, widow with 2 children, and her sister, by the way, had a head injury, her older sister, and she had developed epilepsy. And so my mother had to care for her sister and help to support the family at a very, very early age. I don't know. Some people would look at that and say, "Oh, the poor kid." Well, it was hard, but she didn't grow up spoiled. She grew up somebody, with the intention that, okay, life is happening. I can do this. I have to make the right
Yeah.
choices and the right decisions to be able to get through whatever it is. We all face challenges. We all have things that come at us. It's our perspective that we have in the middle of it, and how we handle it, and how we respond to other people in the midst of it. Some people,
Yep.
some people
I
get
agree.
angry and withdraw. Other people say, "Oh no, I'm just going to do this," and take the bull by the horns and, do things differently. They see their parents doing things a certain way, and they're like, "No, I don't think I like that. I would rather do this," and they do something different, or they do the
Yeah.
same. It just depends. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think it also is a big piece of it, especially a mom at 10. She didn't, from 10 on, she didn't know any different. I think that's a piece I've experienced that in my own life. Like when you have something that's part of a stage of life, and she did it because she didn't know any differently, did not do it. So it's really, really amazing. Yeah.
Well, she
Wow.
also grew up with the mentality of, I want to care for other people. And the more she did that, the more she reached out, the more people reached back. And this is where friendship really, really blossoms, is when because, to tell you the truth, sometimes friends don't just come to us. Sometimes we have to reach out and, and it's not we don't get sometimes from taking, well, more often than not, we get from giving first. And if you want to have a friend, first you have to be a friend. And she followed that philosophy all of her life and did really, really well that way. She had a lot of friends, and her classmates and her stayed close until they all died. They all stayed in the same area. It was quite remarkable. Next week, I'm going to a girl come on. Her name is Amy. And Amy is the daughter of one of my mother's best friends. Her mother and my mother are now gone. But Amy and I have remained friends as a result. And we're going to be talking about their friendship and what that was like and some of the things that they experienced together and how they supported each other. But remember, support doesn't always come just from hard times. Sometimes it comes with good times, right? Can you think of some of the things that we did together that was really nice? And, what did we do? I forget.
Oh my gosh. No, we rode our bikes. I just remember getting to take off and go places. And as we got older, I mean, one of my favorite things is you and we just love to dance.
Yeah.
We always turn the music on and we dance. That was one of our favorite things.
The banana. Pretend with a
I think
microphone.
I think for me, as getting older, one of my favorite things is my memory of coming to see you when you had Paul.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really big for me. It was enjoying a happy moment in your life, and it was a whole new stage of life too. We weren't kids, and seeing you in your house, and it was pretty. For me, it's very memorable.
Yeah, that's right. When I had my son
Yeah.
Paul, that was in 1982. So that was 2 years after I got married, and you sang at my wedding. We were trying to figure out the other day, what
I know.
song did you sing at my wedding? Do you remember?
I feel like I don't think it was. I'm going to say "You Light Up My Life," but I don't think it was. Oh, I'd have to think about it. That's so funny.
I remember you singing.
I don't know. I did sing, and I remember more too, which like Pinkiana, I think, or something. But I don't. You know what? It'll come back to me. But I do remember singing. Yeah, funny.
For people that want
Yeah, and you were happy.
for people that want to see some of the photos of what we're talking about, they can go to my website for that at irisfsmith.com. We have a lot of home movies and, photos and family photos, and you can just see who we're talking about.
Please excuse this brief interruption for a shameless commercial. Remember, you can get your own copy of Iris's book, Never Alone, at irisfsmith.com.
But anyway, back to my mother for a minute. So she always had this caregiving mentality, and it passed on to me. I like to care for people, and now I'm starting to see it in my granddaughter. She's 3 years old, and she likes to care for people.
No.
Most incredible thing,
Oh, that's
The other day I fell, and
love
And
it.
she came alongside of me and she said, Grandma, you shouldn't be doing that. It was wet. You should know better. And don't be stepping up. So she's 3 years old. And then she takes me by the hand and she walks me into the house and she goes, I have to be careful. And I'm like, okay. Out of the mouths of babes.
So funny. She's taking care of you and lecturing you at the same time. That's awesome.
She already has a little bit of my mother in her.
That reminds me of your mother, actually. So that's pretty funny.
My son said the same.
Yeah.
My son Paul said the same thing. He said, Mom, she's so much like you and your mother. And it does my heart good because I just have such wonderful memories of my mother. She went through some very hard time.
Yeah.
And that woman loved her children. She loved her family. And one of the things that she struggled with is when she was in high school and when she was getting ready to graduate high school, her and Fumi and Patsy, the three friends, Patsy was Armenian and Fumi was Jewish Russian and my mother was Jewish Russian, And all of their families were all immigrants and nobody spoke English. All right. So that was kind of funny. They had a pact together. They said, we're going to get out of the house. We're going to get married and start our own lives. And we're all going to live in the same block. And you know something? If you remember the movie Peggy Sue Got Married, do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
talked about, and that was like that back then. You know, they talked about living on the same street, you know, having family time and barbecues and their kids all playing together. That's what Fumi and Patsy and my mother talked about. And they actually did it. Because when my mother got married to my father, they actually lived up the street from each other. And of course, their kids played together. This was in Boston, in Revere, Massachusetts, you know? So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so my mother always had this caregiving servant's heart toward other people. But so did Fumi and Patsy. So they all met each other's needs. And that's why when it was hurting, they were on the phone or they would visit each other and support each other. You know, during the time that Kennedy was shot, I remember them all gathering together and comforting each other,
Funny.
you know. And because we were, as little kids, we didn't understand what had happened. My sister came home from school crying.
No, wait, you how old were you?
Oh, no, in 1963, let's see, I was born in 59, 60, 61, 62. I still have to burn my
you
finger.
were
I was 4.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was little. I don't remember. Yeah.
You were really little.
My mom talks about TV. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so
When it
that
happened.
time when Kennedy was shot, everybody was dismissed from school. So my sister and her friends all came home from school crying. But you know what? They came
Wow.
home to households where parents were there and people were there to comfort them. They weren't alone, right?
Wow.
And so
No.
it just was a different time. But, you know, you talk about how things can be also the same. You know, we do live in different times. Things are different. People have moved around. But what should not change is this business of connecting during good times and hard times. You know, again, with Ecclesiastes, we've said it before, 2 are better than 1. For when one falls, the other one picks the other one up, and pity the man who's alone. That's in the Old Testament. And there's a reason that's in there. Think about that for a minute. Pity the man who's alone. Why does it say that, do you suppose?
Because it's sad. It is sad because, friendship's amazing because think about the people that you're still friends with. And I have lots of friends that have been there for seasons of our lives, but there's, a handful that have been there for the good and the bad and that have sustained. Doesn't mean that those friendships before it's just interesting how, but people really have lots of people who's just stepped up at times of need, like you said, and being there because it's easy to be there for the good stuff.
Can you think of 2 times in your life and my life as friends when something tragic happened where we were there for each other? One of the ones that comes to mind is my parents' divorce. We had such a happy childhood. And then all of a sudden, we have this divorce going on between my parents. And your mother even said to me at the time, because she was mentoring me, it's like, a divorce is like a living death. It really is.
Yeah.
And look at how the divorce rate and what it does to children. It really shatters, their confidence.
Yeah.
Did mine, But we
No,
think
it's interesting because I never thought about that with you. I always felt like, we didn't miss a beat. And because so for me, I remember getting to stay at your house when you moved. I got to stay with you for a whole week. And I thought that was a big deal,
Yeah.
to get to go stay with you and do that. And I think maybe at that point in time, your dad had been around, but then I think probably a little bit before you moved, I wouldn't have seen him as much as I saw your mom. So
yeah.
but good times, your wedding, and I remember when Paul was born, and then when Paul broke his leg. I just remember being super upset about that.
Oh, it was
So,
terrible. Do you remember that story, how that
I
happened?
know.
Do you remember how that happened?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. You should tell it. It is kind of wild.
Yeah. My son, Paul, who's my pride and joy, he's the only one I was able to have. Another story. When he was 2, he was with a babysitter and they were shopping. I was working for the Association for Retarded Citizens at the time. That's what they called it. And it was basically people with disabilities. And I loved it. I took them on trips, recreational events, and I used to take Paul with me all the time. This time I couldn't because I was working at the office. So the babysitter that was in charge of him loved him dearly. She was very trustworthy, but things happened, right? So they were shopping, and she had a daughter that was a little hyper. Okay, so she was bouncing him in the carriage, and you probably too. It breaks my heart to even talk about this. And she toppled him over, and it snapped his femur. And so I came just in time to pick them up from shopping, and I heard him crying, and I said, "Oh my!" And it was an unusual cry. It's very hard for me to talk about, but
Yeah.
I immediately went to him, and I suspected that he broke his leg. I just knew by instinct, because you know as a mother when something's wrong, right? So I picked him up, and I held him right in front of me with his legs straight, because I knew not to bend his leg. And the doctor said, and I took him to the hospital myself. I did not call an ambulance. I put him in the car, kept him straight, and I brought him there myself.
Crazy.
And they came, I'll never forget it. They came out, and they wheeled him in. And the doctor said to me, he said, you saved his life. You knew just what to do. If he bent his leg the wrong way, he severed his artery. So after that, he was
I know.
in traction for a whole month in the hospital. He was such a good little boy. And I never left his side. I didn't think he was in the hospital in traction for a month. I never slept. And I got very sick from not sleeping. I couldn't. I was so and you know something, we do have, pains that, like almost like sympathy pains, because I had terrible pain in my leg that whole month. And I just sympathy pains for my baby. And then after that, he was in a cast. But here's the thing. He wasn't alone. My mother came up. My sister came up at the time. All kinds of relatives and friends visited him. And he had a very special birthday in the hospital in Traction, where we hired a clown with balloon. And, we had about 30 people in a room in the hospital celebrating his birthday. And it makes me cry to this day. But he was still good.
Yeah.
But, I have to tell
So
you.
sorry. A memory.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Again, he was not alone, and he became stronger as a result of it. He became a very strong child, as a result. When you have an only child, they can end up spoiled. He was not spoiled. He learned to work hard. And to this day, I mean, you wouldn't, me and my husband are so blessed to have him as a son. I mean, he can't do enough for us and his wife and his kids. I mean,
That's neat.
he's another one who's just like my mother. See, this gets passed on, But through all of these challenges, if we're not alone, we could make it, especially with God's help.
Yeah.
We did a lot of praying, and it just really stuck together, So, and you think of a time when you were in high school, or maybe even younger, when you might have gone through something where I might have been there for you. I'm talking about when you're in, elementary school. I can think of one time.
Oh, yeah, I can. I got hit over the head by the neighbor with a metal pipe.
That was one.
So that was one. We had to run and get my head stitched. Think of me when I was little. Oh my gosh.
When you
But
first,
I'm sure I came crying up.
it was when you first started school. And this is where I really felt very sisterly toward you.
That was funny.
Okay.
Oh, were they meeting me at the bus stop?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah,
was,
they were mean to me at the bus stop.
because you were the youngest, and all the kids were making fun of you. And I stood there and I said to one kid, I said, leave her alone. And they started in on me. And then your mother came out because you went home crying. And she looked at me and she said, Iris, what happened here? She wanted me to tell her what happened. And she said, did you defend Karen?
Adel, and that run.
And I said, yes, I did. But I almost got beat up for it.
Yep, and now I'm sure. Well, it's so funny because you were always so great with me, but when you really think about it, everybody looked at me like the tag along. So, because I, why would you want to spend time with her? So, it's
Because
kind
you
of
were
funny.
like my sister. That's why,
Anyhow, yeah. So they figured it out. They sucked it up eventually. It was fine, but yeah. You know, that is funny.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I know. I'm trying to think. I remember you being same thing. You'd come over, spend time at the house, when things weren't great. And then, we get to talk a lot about, I mean, you moved about the time I was probably figuring out boys. So, like, we kind of were on that a little bit there, but we get to share that a little bit. But
While you were still
no,
living
I
on,
mean, there's never any.
while you were still living on Richards Ave in Sharon next to me, we actually went on a double date while
Yeah.
I was still living on Richards Ave. Okay, so how old-
That, and I'm like, I don't remember that.
I was 15.
I would have been 13. I wouldn't have been able to go on a date before I was 13. There's no way.
But we went back to your house in Sharon, and I was dating Ron. Remember
Yeah.
I was dating Ron?
Could have been youth. Yeah, Ron where, but it could have been youth group. So in my mind, I had no clue we were on a date. So, so when you first told me that, I'm going, I don't think I was on a date. It's like I don't remember.
At 12.
And you're like, I was probably you were like 15. I couldn't date Iris.
You know what it was? It was youth group. That's what it was.
Probably youth group. Oh my gosh, fish and chips. It was my favorite. Yeah. We went to that and we made jean hats. People picture us in our jean hats. That's
Wasn't
what I
there a
think
time
of,
though
yeah.
when you moved to Mountain Street? Is that what it was? Was Mountain Street in Sharon?
Yeah, could have been Roman Street.
Okay, so when you moved over there, we
Yeah.
did go on a double date, and I dated Ron, and you dated Ricky, and we went out together. Ron was driving, and listen to this. Do you remember this? We came home, and we're in your house, and we're watching Saturday Night Live. Okay, and I did not know,
okay,
Karen, I did not know that I had celiac disease, and I must have eaten a lot of gluten because I remember while they were watching Saturday Night Live, I said, Karen, come here. And I made you come upstairs. He said, what's wrong? And I said, I have diarrhea and I'm on a date.
Oh, no, I know. That was not fun.
Of all
Probably got a house of pizza.
the things
it's
that
fine.
we had to get to have the runs on a date. I mean, embarrassing, you know?
That's all right.
I didn't know I
Just
had
switched you out. You were
disease.
fine. Who knew? Crazy when you look back.
Right.
That is. Yeah.
Even that night, you comforted me and you said, it's okay. Don't feel bad. He said, I would change the clothes for you, you know?
I got clothes. What particular moment? Oh my gosh. I don't remember. I remember now that you're saying that back to the house and stuff.
But you
But
rescued
that was like
me.
our favorite thing to do was that we went to
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Karen, you rescued me and you made me feel better, and then I wasn't so embarrassed, you know? And that,
Yeah.
what if-
Well, nobody knew.
yeah. So
I
before we close out this particular podcast, which is interesting,
Yeah.
as we're closing out,
Yeah, I know. It took a turn. It took a turn.
did you have anything else that you wanted?
Oh my gosh.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Did I have anything else? What do I want to add? I don't know. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, we're always there. So I mean, plenty of stories to tell, but it's funny. Yeah, we were always there for each other, and you were like the big sister. And, the point when, yeah, it's just so funny when you think about it because it's been so long. And then you start telling stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. It's like so funny when you start bringing it up. But yeah, youth group was fun. And I do think that we got to spend time and do a little bit more. I probably wouldn't have been able to get into a car with boys if it hadn't been for youth group, which is kind of weird when you think about it. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, there you go. My mother's like, yeah. Nowadays, I'd be like, nope.
I'll never forget the first time you brought me to youth group. And remember, my mother was Jewish, but my father was Italian Catholic.
I know.
My father was thrilled,
Yeah.
and my mother was like, huh? You know? And so I'll never forget the first time we went.
Pastor.
And the first thing that we said, I remember we sat down and we were watching the boys sing. Okay. I don't know if you remember this. And,
Yeah.
and my eyes,
Oh, at the church.
yeah, and my eyes zeroed right, you know who. And it was like my
I know.
love. It was almost like these little hearts went off in my head, you know? I'll never forget it. It took me a long time to get
Yeah.
over.
And again, you're like 15 and I'm 12 and I didn't quite get it. I'm like, yeah, fine. I'm like, I'm like, what? Big deal. It's so funny because I know as we talked about it over the years, it is pretty funny.
Talk
It
about
was
puppy
cute.
love. I mean, It was almost like Cupid stuck
Yeah.
me with an arrow. That's how I just took one look at him and I was like, I'm in love.
So funny. That's so funny. Yeah, I know. When you think back at those moments, it's like, yep, he sort of looks. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, he was super cute.
And Karen, we were really, really blessed to have grown up in such a nice town. Sharon, Massachusetts was amazing back then. And I talk about growing up in Sharon in my book. And so if you want to know more about
Yep.
growing up in Sharon, Massachusetts and what it was like back in the 60s and 70s, go to irisfsmith.com and
Yeah.
you'll see.
Good job.
So anyway, next time we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have one of my mother's friends' daughters come in and talk about what it was like, with their friendship growing up in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And so we're going to have some nice memories to share from that. And so we're thankful that you joined us today. I hope we weren't too silly for you. And yeah, these are our memories, but some people can relate to what we're talking about. And we're hoping that
Yeah.
this inspires you to encourage each other and get together with friends as much as you can. There's nothing like friendship, and especially long-term friendship. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next
Yeah.
time. Bye, Karen. I'll see you next time.
See, love
You
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was awesome, wasn't it?
I know those stories were really something.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time when we share more stories from Iris's book, Never Alone.
Order your copy of Never Alone at irisfsmith.com today.